Hello, I'm Marjorie Dagnall, and I'm talking to you from Fern Lodge. I'm always delighted to be here. My support for nursing is long known by many people, and I love this facility. And I've been here many times, and I've been very grateful to be able to talk with the individuals who are so supportive of nursing and of this particular facility. The title today is a little bit odd, isn't it? That you are not the commentary. First of all, I'd like to tell you that when I was a youngster, I played a lot of cowboys. I lived in a village in which there were a whole bunch of kids who were very eager to play, and they played cowboys. And we often sat on parts of tree trunks and pretended they were horses and had a great time. Often I was designated to be the stagecoach driver. And that was because in our village, we had a fire hydrant, which was attached to a hose carrier. That meant that it was a tin shed that one could sit upon, because inside it were the hoses that would attach, of course, to the water system. I used to sit up there, and I used to be the stagecoach driver. I had no idea what a stagecoach driver did.
49.
I had a little bit of information from what my grandmother told me, and a little bit from school, and a little bit from my friends, and a big imagination. Then I got a little bit of TV knowledge, and I put it all together, and I became the stagecoach driver. That was my role many, many days. This summer beginning, I was cleaning out closets, and I came upon the American dolls that my girls had. And I remember how they would sit on the floor, and one of them had a horse. And she would say to the horse, "Now you're going to go drink. We're going to have you here, you're having some water. Right now, you're having some water, and then we're going to walk to the pasture. Right now, all right, boom, 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 boom. You are walking to the pasture, and you're going to be able to run. And so right now, you're running and having a good time." My daughter didn't know anything about horses, but she knew something about a pasture, and she knew what was going on. And she made up a story. And I made up a story about how I was a stagecoach driver. More importantly, I also decided what a stagecoach driver did based on some information which I gathered. When my girls were playing with their American dolls, they had the horses do all kinds of things, and they weren't busy in the kitchen doing all kinds of things. And it was something that they made up as they went along. Now, that was then, but I would like to now tell you a story in detail, and I hope you'll bear with me, because I'm going to go through it slowly, because the whole talk is based actually on this one episode. It happened on St. Patrick's Day of this particular year, and I remember that distinctly, because it was one of those days when I had several calls as a practitioner immediately before it was time to take my son to school. He has kind of a funny situation anyway, where he's decided in his mind that he needs to get up at 5 minutes to 8 and leave at 8 minutes after 8 to get to school. And I've learned that I need to be right there on time in order to create this situation to get him to school at the right time. So I make sure that I'm not on the phone during this period of time. But on St. Patrick's Day, there were too many calls, and I really couldn't get off. So I had to then make myself a little bit late for his schedule, which I try to adhere to. So I spoke to him, and I said to him, "Well, we're late," and he was a good sport. And he said, "We got to hurry." So I ran into the bathroom. My washer and dryer are in the bathroom. And I grabbed the clothes that were on the floor, dirty and messed up, because I was going to put them in the laundry as soon as I got home. And I threw them on, literally. I did not bother to brush my teeth. I did not bother to wash my face. I did not bother to comb my hair. I just zipped out as fast as I could to the car. Now, I need to tell you that for years, I made a practice of many times during the day. And when I say many, I mean 20 times a day. I simply stop what I'm doing. I try to put my hands in my lap and I say, because I love what I'm saying, not because it's a ritual, but because I love it, I say to myself, I have nothing to plan, nothing to organize, nothing to fix, nothing to heal, nothing to long for, because I simply have all good now. And I love the affirmation of that because it's the truth. And I try not to organize my life, and I try not to decide how to do things. So I'm trusting that all is well. Now that's important, because after I dropped my son off, I found my car going in a different direction than usual. In fact, it was on the freeway going to the neighboring city. At the same time that I realized that I was not going home, the thought was very strong. Oh, you're going to renew your driver's license. So I went along with where the car was going, so to speak. And that's when the commentary started. The commentary was talking to me about what I was doing, the same way that the girls were talking to the horse and to their dolls about what they were doing. The commentary was saying, in a very loving way, which made it harder to detect, well, you shouldn't be doing this. You are off schedule already. And if you don't go and call those people that you said you would right now, you're going to be off schedule all day long. You don't have time to do this. You don't have to do this. You can do this next week. You have a week before you have to do your driver's license renewal. Then the commentary said, well, look at you. You're going to have your picture taken. And it's going to look very much like a mugshot unless you do something better. Come tomorrow after you've had your hair done. Because you haven't even brushed your hair, you haven't brushed your teeth, you've got your old crummy clothes on. This is not the day to go. You don't have time to do this. And then commentary said, you know what? There are new laws. And you haven't looked at the booklet. You don't know the new laws. You don't know what's gonna be on the test. Because we in California have a test that we have to take. And if we don't pass it, then we don't get our license. So the commentary says, no, not today. You don't have enough time. You're not dressed for this. You don't know enough for this. This is not the day to be doing this at all. Meanwhile, my car is going on the freeway and getting off at the exit that takes me to the DMV. And sure enough, I'm in front of the DMV, and then I'm in the parking lot, and there's no parking places. And the commentary says, see, it's going to take you an hour and a half anyway to get through because it's the first thing in the morning. And because of the situation with the pandemic, there's tons of people that need to come in at one time. So you're not going to be able to do this. And I made a conscious decision. The first conscious decision that I made. And it was, right, this is not the day. So I drove out of the parking lot, made a right turn, went in front of the DMV, and entered into the parking lot again with that entrance. So here I am. The commentary says, oh, why didn't you just go home? You are always trying to do something kind of risky. Don't do this. I thought, well, if there's a parking place, I'll think about it. So lo and behold, there was a parking place. So I parked in it and I thought about it. And I thought, I don't know. Don't think so. And then it started to sprinkle. So then I thought, that's it exactly. You cannot stand out there in the rain when you don't have to. You don't need to be doing this. So it's time for you to go. Second conscious decision. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to stand in the rain. I'm not going to do this. So I reached down to turn the key, to turn the engine on to leave, and I pull the key out, and I get out of the car, and I lock the door, and I go stand in the rain. At this point, it's about 9 o'clock, and so they're letting us in early, and we all go in. Now the line is around the block, and it's, I don't know how many people, but it's too many people. So we all go in, and we're all sandwiched in there, and a worker says to each of us, what do you need? So when he said to me, what do you need? I said, I'm here to renew my driver's license. He said, good. Now, he said, you picked the worst day ever. It hasn't been this busy for at least a few weeks. Oh, well, you're here, so let's do it. So could you give me the affidavit that the state sent you? I said, no, I don't have it. He said, you don't have it? I said, no, I don't have it. He said, well, then give me your application. I said, well, I don't have an application. So he looks at me for a minute and he says, you have to do it online anyway. And he said, there's so many people over there, you'll never get to the computers. Why don't you just give it to me? Feed the information to me and I'll do it. So I, okay. So he says, now you have a number, go sit over there. Well, there was no sitting places. There was just wall-to-wall standing places. So I stood there for a while and I thought, no. And I made my third conscious decision. I said, these people are being very kind and they're wonderful, but I have to tell them, take my name off the list. I'm going home. So I move forward to do that. And I look up at the screen and my number's there. So I then go to where it says Windows 7. I go to Windows 7. The lady says, what do you want? I say, I'm going to renew my driver's license. She says, super, just give me $36. So I gave her $36. And then she said, now go over there and talk to that woman so that you can have your vision test. And we both looked and there was no way that I could even find it through the people. And then she said, oh, that's right. We're remodeling it. So it's not where it used to be. It's right around the corner. Oh, she said, you'll never find it. And then so out loud in front of all these people, she says, Sue, Marjorie's coming for her vision test. So the lady who hasn't brushed her hair or brushed her teeth and has on yesterday's ripped clothes gets a few view. Everybody looks, but the good thing about that was they made a path. And I went and did my vision test in about 2.5 minutes. And then she said, go have your picture taken. And I knew where that was. And I went and she said, put your feet in the white. And I put my feet in the white and I looked down to see if they were in the white, being obedient that I am. And at that point, what happens is that I look up and she takes my picture. So I don't have to think about whether I'm going to smile. I don't have to think about how miserable this is going to look. I don't have to think about anything. She says, okay, you're done. I said, oh no, thank you very much, but I haven't done my test. And she said, oh, you don't need to do the test. So she said, just go over to that lady and sign your name out and that'll be it. So I went over to that lady and I signed my name and she said, thank you very much. Have a good day and we'll send your license. And that was it. So within about 20 minutes, I got out of there. But it was very interesting to me to think about what went on because the commentary had a different view than what was really going on. Because the divine idea that is the only idea was present and it was accomplishing what it needed to do in spite of the commentary. Now, during this time, you'll notice that I never said anything about doing anything metaphysical. I never sat there and said, well, if it's God's idea, then that will be right. I never said animal magnetism can stop me from doing. I didn't say anything. I didn't need to say anything because a few weeks before, I had realized that I was going to go to the DMV. Now, that was a pretty big thing for me and a happy thing to be doing because of the COVID, my life was limited to taking my son to school, going to grocery shopping, having my hair done, and that was about it. Our church was not meeting, so we didn't have that, and there were no lessons, nothing. So to go to the DMV was a big deal, and I was happy about doing it. So I thought about it for a minute, and I thought, all right, how are you going to go to that DMV? Are you going to go as a quote unquote human, as a mortal? Are you going to go there to a mortal institution calling itself the DMV, self-governing, pseudo-governing, saying some people can have a driver's license and some people can't. Some people can register their car and some people can't. Are you going to go there, or are you going to go as a divine idea? Are you going to go there as the image and likeness of God? And so then I reasoned that if I was the evidence of God as the image and likeness, thinking that if God looked into the mirror, God would see himself. And if he saw himself, he would be seeing myself. Because we know through the revelation of Mary Baker Eddy, through our revelation ourselves, through our insights and through our prayers, that there is only one. So that meant to me that the mind that was me was going to the mind that was the DMV, and mind would be meeting mind. And if mind is love, as Mrs. Eddy clearly defines God as mind and love and the other synonyms, if that was the case, then love was meeting love. And that's all that was really going on in that time. So I then saw that the experience that the commentary was saying had nothing to do with divine love's driver's license experience, so to speak. That, as Peter Henniker Heaton has said, I was divinely certified. And I went knowing that. And so it's not true that I didn't really do any work. I did. I understood that principle and its idea is one. And I saw that when I made 3 conscious decisions to override mind's experience as me, I couldn't do it. I consciously started, I went out of the parking lot, I came back in. I went to turn the key on, I turned the key off. I went to leave the building, I went and paid my fees. It didn't matter what I thought. It didn't matter what the commentary was saying. What was going on was that the I of my being was definitely going on as a divine idea. At that point, I was not the commentary, but I was the word. I remember, and some of you remember this story because I've told it before in talks because I love it. When I was first reading it for the first time, we had in our church a lady who was well experienced. She spoke very little. She came every Wednesday evening she said very little. But when she said something, I paid close attention because it was always wise. It was always mindful. So I was up on the platform and she was down in the first row, and she was very short in stature and a little bit bent over. And so when she stood up, I was so excited. And she told us a story about what she had done. She said, my girlfriend that I met in kindergarten, and we went all the way through high school together, and we went all the way through college together, and we've been friends for 45 or 50 years or some number. She said she came and we spent the whole day reminiscing. She said we talked about everything that we did from kindergarten all the way up to the present. And she said we laughed and we had a wonderful time. And then she put her head down and she looked directly at me and she said, and not one word of it was true, and sat down. And I, oh, my goodness. But she was separating fact from fiction. And that's what we as Christian scientists are doing every day, wherever we are. Mrs. Eddy clearly says in our textbook on page 150 and on the top of 151 that the human mind and body are myths. That is M-Y-T-H-S. They are myths. A myth is void of content, of integrity, of truth, of substance. A myth is not worthy to be listened to, much less practiced or experienced. So there is a void. If the human mind is a myth, then the divine mind must be all. But the human mind does not know it's a myth. Being nothing, it has no intelligence. It cannot determine that it is not true. It believes its own stuff. Now, let's go back a little bit. Where did that story come from? The commentary, I mean. I'm saying that mortal mind has to create a story because it has nothing. It has no truth. It has nothing. So it creates a story and it calls it us. The commentary is what it thinks we're doing. Now, where does the commentary get its information? The commentary gets its information from the same place that I got my information about being a stagecoach driver. A little bit here, a little bit there, a little bit of history, a lot of experience. Well, my grandmother said, so-and-so said, everybody knows, the paper says, and we have all this information. And it's random because mortal mind, being nothing, cannot organize itself. So it has all this information. None of it's true, but it has all this information. So it spews out what it thinks happens to individuals who go to the motor vehicles department to get their driver's licenses. It spews information about each of us, about what we're doing based on what it thinks man does. Well, if man is going to get his driver's license, he surely should read and know the law. He surely should have time to do it. But mortal mind also knows that we don't always have time and we don't always read. And so it has all of this information. In my case, it was really valid information. It was not information that accused me of anything. It was benign. It didn't say, hey, you didn't study. What do you think you're doing? You never get anything right. You never prepare for anything. You never do the right thing at the right time. Why are you doing this now? If you were at home, you could be doing what you're supposed to be doing. But you're always risking things. You're always doing something. That would not be benign. But this was benign. And therefore, it made it harder to detect that it had nothing to do with me. If it was accusing me, I would say, oh, the accuser is not there. We know that mortal mind accuses us all the time of something. Always busy telling us what it thinks we are. Well, you always postpone things. If people really knew who you were, you call yourself a Christian Scientist? You're not a Christian Scientist. You don't know the first thing. That accusation tends to make us rise in some kind of rebellion when we catch on what's going on. But the benign stuff, well, yes, you are doing very well. Yes, you're doing fine. Yeah, well, these are just the facts. I'm just bringing the facts to you. And that's what the commentary was in my case. It was very pleasant and very nice. But the realization that the commentary is just a bundle of false information making itself known to you randomly. And unless we're alert, we accept that commentary as what we are really doing. I told somebody the other day that of all the things that I learned last year, the most significant thing that I think that I learned was something that's a little bit obscure. When I take my son to school every day, there are two roads that I can take to go home. And on one day, I said to myself, I wonder what road mind is going to take today. And I found myself on a certain road. And then I said to myself, I wonder why mind chose this. And right away, the response was, it's none of your business. And that's the wisest thing that I can bring to you today. That whatever mind does, and mind does it all, the commentary does nothing. The commentary makes up stories about what you're doing. And if you're not careful, you think that's what you're doing. But I knew I was going to the DMV as a divine idea. And the divine idea didn't give two hoots if I'd studied for the test. It didn't care how many bodies there seemed to be. It didn't make any difference at all because there was nothing going on except God and his idea. And I knew that. Now, let's take a look at body. Body is one. It's God's. Mrs. Eddy clearly points that out. But the commentary, the commentary. The commentary tells us that we're too fat, too short, too this, too that, to do, too old, da. But that's not the point that I want to make. We know that. But the commentary also makes up a story about us based on what it thinks we should be at 40 or 50 or 60 or 70. It tells us the exercise we should get and the food we should eat and the relationships we should have. It tells us everything that we should be doing. Based on what? Based on the same information that I got to be a stagecoach driver, and the same information that the human thought had when I was getting a DMV. When it was simply saying, this is what is supposed to happen, might happen, could happen, or should happen to people your age, or of your thought, or of your culture, or of your background. It is simply telling you in advance what you need to be alert about. It prophesies, it tells you. And if you're not careful, you believe the commentary. And yes, you know there's only one life. And yes, you know it's the divine life. But somehow the commentary, that whole belief that if you persist in telling a lie, people will generally believe it. Now, we as Christian Scientists are separating fact from fiction. And it's important that we think about our bodies as the one body of God and hold on to that. And not to think that there is a diseased body, an old body, a falling apart body, because that's random information. It's based upon statistics, newspaper articles, experiences with our family and with our friends. In reality, it has nothing going on except imagination, except a little bit of information and nothing else. Now, some of you know that some years ago, I gave a talk that was called Catching Up with Soul. And I want to say a little bit about that talk today, because it has something to do with nursing, and it has something to do with our thought that we are being nursed. That it centered around a story that we know in Numbers about Moses. And about at one point, as it says in Numbers 12, Miriam and Aaron got upset with Moses because Moses had married outside of their culture and race. He had married an individual that they were not wanting him to marry. So they decided, the commentary said to them, well, you know, God just doesn't speak to Moses. He speaks to us too. So why should we pay attention to Moses? I mean, we know everything. Now in Numbers, it talks about the fact that God heard that and spoke to them. And so we could say right reasoning or consciousness spoke to them. But somehow or another, they came to the realization that they were dishonoring a fellow member, Moses, and that they were taking away the honor that was due to him because of a race situation. So what happened then was that Miriam contracted leprosy, and the story tells us that she was white as snow. But Moses interfered when she saw what she was doing in terms of dishonoring Moses, she asked for help. She asked for forgiveness. And Moses seconded that and spoke with God and asked God to forgive her. And so the agreement was made that Miriam would stay out of the camp for X number of days. Now, what happened at that point was interesting, is that everyone who was with them on this march that they were on stopped, and they waited. Now, this talk is based on a story that an anthropologist friend of mine said about a particular tribe that at one point walked a long time and has to finally stop because they said they had to wait for their soul to catch up with them. But so certain of their identity, so certain were they, that they knew their identity would be brought to them by soul. I like that story because they were willing to wait. Now, most of us don't want to wait. Most of us want to be identified as the sinless identity that soul brings to us, and rightly so. But the footsteps along the way, as Mrs. Eddy tells us, are important. So what we have to do then is at times to take a time out, to wait until we have a better sense of what love is showing us. Not a punishment. It's not something that we are doing that is taking us away from anything. It's something that is giving us everything. Now, in my office, I took a time out to determine what it looked like to go to the DMV. And at that point, I understood that what we needed to know was our divinity. I needed to know that divinity because there is one thought, one man, one mind. So in thinking about that, I took a time out, a time in, you might say. Now, sometimes, as with Miriam, we need a longer time out to let the truth of our nature come to us, to catch up with us. Now, obviously, we've never left it. It has never left us. Soul is our sinless identity. It is that identity which moves us from place to place in principle and in love and in spirit. It's terribly important to take the time out to be able to think clearly as mind, not as the human. Mrs. Eddy has told us the human mind and body are myths. So therefore, we don't want to create a story. We want to be the Word of God. And the Word of God is our identity. I was delighted over the weekend to find that thought, that in Latin, identity means same entity. So we have the same entity as the mind that created us. And there again, If that mind were to look out into a mirror, the only thing that that mind could see was itself. And the name for that is man. If that's the case, then we are operating out of soul as the same entity. Our identification is at one with soul. But mostly we come to situations that stop us from moving forward. I was so grateful that I had 3 distinct attempts to stop divinity from operating in my experience. 3 times I said, nope, I'm going home. 3 times I did not. We know that mind is supreme. We know that our identity is set. Miriam's identity was set, but she listened to the commentary. She listened to the thought that, well, you have someone here who's done something that you don't like, and therefore you don't have to do what they say if they're the so-called leader, or you don't even have to be kind to them particularly. You can in fact be a little jealous. You can in fact be a little critical. But that was the commentary about people, about what people do when other people do things that they don't approve of. Well, you get kind of stuffy about it, kind of angry about it, kind of critical about it. But that's not the word of God. That's the commentary. But if we don't pay any attention to that, we think it's us. And so what happened to Miriam then? Am I saying that Miriam got leprosy because she thought wrongly? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. But I am saying that our thinking is our experience. And it might be at that point that Miriam recognized her sonship with God and her own demand of her own purity, and that she took the time out to respect herself and her creator and the relationship between God and his idea, man, between principle and idea. And what I love about this story so much is that everybody stayed with her. Because isn't that one of our fears? That if we think too deeply or we become too immersed in science, in the revelation, in the word, as Mrs. Eddy explains it, as the oneness with our creator, we will have God and nothing else. That we will have missed out on something. That people will not wait for us. That opportunity will not wait for us. That we will be left alone. And therefore, we want to take advantage of every single human moment that we can. But the realization that one moment of divine consciousness, as our leader tells us, is that which explains all. Now, how important it is that you here at Fern Lodge are doing what you are doing. I can't thank you enough, because you have not listened to the commentary. You have listened to the word of God. And you have taken a time out to more fully grasp and understand that word. In Miriam's case, those individuals who camped there and stayed there and refused to go on, recognized that for them to go on would be to miss an opportunity. And Mrs. Eddy points out that Jesus' resurrection was a disciples' resurrection. And I love this story so much because I believe that those individuals who just said, okay, we'll wait for Miriam, they recognized that what she was doing was important, that it was their healing as well as her healing. Every one of you who is from administration to nursing to the so-called patients are here because you have shunned the commentary and you have accepted the truth. And you are waiting, not waiting like looking at the clock, not waiting like crossing off days on a calendar. But I like to think that you're waiting just like a waiter does on you when you go in a restaurant. The waiter becomes focused on you and what you need. You become the important thing to that waiter. In this facility, as well as Christian Science facilities, and certainly other places that are not Christian Science, serve God. And they wait. The individual thought waits on God, celebrates God, cherishes God, is involved with that relationship with God. How wonderful it is that you do that. It took me a long time to realize that in the definition of church, healing comes last. But the entire thought of uplifting the race, of waking the dormant understanding, is right there on the top, evidencing the utility of church. Church is that which is elevating the race. Church is that which is rousing the dormant understanding. And that church is our practice of Christian Science. And it's here now. So you who are here looking for a healing of some kind, do not think for 1 minute that it is personal, because it's the truth being urged on everyone. One God, one idea, an active portion of one stupendous whole. Good identifies man with universal good. Goodness, that's what does it. When we pray, we see a different sense of goodness. We begin to see that relationship. We don't have to guess at what it's like to be a stagecoach person. We know exactly what it is. How important it is then that we support and wait with you, because what you are doing is what we are doing. There is no division between those who are well, quote unquote, and those who are not well. There is no division between those which are quote unquote old and those who are not. Disease, death, age. These are the random thoughts that the commentary wants to put on each of us. Random. And if it can, it gets us to agree that the randomness is really our experience, when our experience is really the orderly presentation of love, loving itself. The news, as we see it and hear it, it puts us in touch with much of the world's difficulties. Prayer puts us in touch with the world's goodness. So as we know God, we do not wait then with a sense of discouragement. We are not forlorn. We are not thinking that we are deprived of anything. But as they waited for Miriam to catch up to her total completeness as man, collective and individual, they waited with honor and respect, the same way we wait for you and your healing, and the members of our church, and the members of our family, and the members of our world. That each individual at some point, somewhere, is coming in contact with his soul, the soul that is God. It's catching up with him. Why? Because it is truth urging on mortals its resisted claims. Because it is mind revealing itself, and there is no opposite mind. There is no opposing mind. I think that we wait, like J.B. Phillips said in the translation in Romans, that's 8:19, and I know you know it, most of us love it. The whole creation is on tiptoe to see the wonderful sight of the sons of God coming into their own. Coming into their own. Not being left out. Not being doing without, but being on their own wonderful sense of the same entity. And so the work that we do is vital. It's not just a work that tries to heal the world or fix it. As you recall, for me and my experience, every day, 20 times a day, 30 times a day, it is, I have nothing to organize, nothing to plan, nothing to fix. That includes dinner. The thought in the middle of the day is, uh-oh, I got to fix dinner. What am I going to have? There's probably nothing in the freezer. There's nothing in the fridge. What am I going to have? And at that point, I have to stop and say, it's none of my business. Mind is caring for me. And the most wonderful things have happened during that time, in which people have suddenly appeared with a meal out of nowhere, or somebody in the family will just fix something. It's not always my responsibility. In fact, dear hearts, it's never my responsibility. But the commentary says it is. The commentary says, ah, yes, but you are the mother. You know that you need to instruct Colin. How else will he know? And I'm thinking that in my hearts of hearts, the best thing that I can do is not to organize our mother's plan for my son, or our mother's plan for my friends, or my family members, or my church, or even my government. That my job is to know that I don't have anything to fix. I am seeing the beauty and the purity and the joy and the dominion and the grace which comes with understanding that infinite mind is all in all. It's wonderful to realize that as we see and work with healing, the foundation of material existence weakens. Whenever spiritual regeneration takes place, this weakening of the material is the only thing that goes on. The reality of the spiritual is strong and only. It is the realization that it's not just a personal healing. Sometimes we get caught up and think it's our personal responsibility because it was our personal something that got us in the spot that we're in. As a practitioner, I hear people say to me a lot, how did I get here? And I say, love brought you here. Love is responsible for you. And love is seeing that only good is your experience. The foundation of material existence weakens with every advanced thought that we have. And a good friend of mine pointed out something very interesting, and that was the advanced idea that Christian Science is the advanced idea, that you are the advanced idea. Advanced in age, no. Advanced in experience, no. But advanced as mind's fulfillment of its own idea. We are way beyond the cutting edge. And it doesn't do us any good whatsoever to hide that wonderful place where we are. It's important that we understand the importance of what we're doing. There is no personal body, there is no personal mind, there is no personal experience, there is no personal sense, there is no sense of person. There is mind and its idea. And it's mind that needs no human commentary. But the material life wants to present itself in a story that seems so real. And it's good for us to take a time out every now and then and realize that the things that we're struggling with that seem so real are not real in the scientific sense of the word at all. It's interesting to me that I had someone enter into the hospital. Two things were interesting about this case. One of them was because he was a gentleman who was a longtime member of the Mother Church, very active in his branch church, and seemed to have a difficulty with what we might say was a heart problem. And he and I were working, but his wife felt very concerned. And so she made sure that he entered into the hospital. And I thought to myself, hooray, the advanced idea is going into the hospital with all the technological information. The king now, technology, that we all seem to serve and wait upon, was now seeing the advanced idea. We were not going there for help. We were not going there. Oh, the commentary said so. The commentary said that's exactly what we were doing. But the commentary doesn't know anything. The commentary is just made up of a whole bunch of random stuff. But the word was present as that man. And so he went there as the advanced idea, knowing the superiority and the onlyness of the one infinite mind. And so in a way, I looked at what he was doing as taking a time out from spiritual life. On the contrary, he was taking a time out from the material foundation, which was giving him a commentation all the time, the commentary of what he was doing. And so he was scheduled to have surgery, not once, but 4 times, because each time he would come to the day of surgery, there would be something that prevented that from happening. So on the 5th day, when the surgeon came in and said, okay, we're going, I'm going to take one more look and see what we need to do. And he came back and he said, you know, your heart is blocked. The arteries going to that heart are blocked. But you know what? You have created a new artery, and your heart is being fed. There's no surgery. We will leave the blockage there. We don't have to worry. We have found another way. And there was enormous rejoicing. You know, all of us have seen that picture of the cement with the weed coming through it. And this was something like that, that if the normal pathway was blocked, then mind would make another one. There is always that path that cannot be seen by error or evil. It cannot be the receiving end of a commentary that is made of nothing. So as we end this talk today, I would like for you, for me, for us to remember that our work is important work. It is the advanced idea that we are not missing anything by giving up the Marjorie that says that she is the all in all, and understanding that the name is Christ Scientist, in understanding that the world waits for this information. It doesn't get it from us. It is that which comes as the utility of church. It is that important thing that goes to the DMV as a divine idea and refuses to go there as a human using Christian Science to get it through the tests, but understands that there are no tests. There's God and his idea. Going there as a Christian Scientist is not enough. It's going there as a Christian Science named Christ Science. And it takes as long as it takes for us to realize that, we have that time. And we don't wait alone. We wait on God. And we join then that wonderful sense that stands on tiptoe to see the Son of Man coming into his own. catching up with his own divine being, refusing the commentary, but in fact being the Word. Thank you so much. I always appreciate being here. It's always a delight. I wish you well, and thank you.